on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Motherfucker, he's on his...
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Listener discretion is advised. The show contains graphic language and depictions of violence. It may not be suitable for all audiences.
We say fuck a lot. Hey guys, welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
First, let's thank the lovely folks who joined us at patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast. New show supporters, James, Sarah, and Rachel.
Yes, this episode is sponsored by those lovely patrons.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and if you want more Mountain Murders, you can find us on patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast.
Dylan, I have to confess, I went back earlier, listened to a couple of the older episodes. Oh my gosh. I'm glad people are so forgiving and understanding. Our sound quality has definitely improved.
When I find myself back in the Wayback Machine and in Mountain Murders and those old episodes.
Like 2019 episodes?
Yeah. I apologize, and I do appreciate that people are forgiving, and they realize they understand it's a do-it-yourself podcast still, and we have made great strides, though it did take us a while to get some stuff figured out.
I often wonder if we should go back and re-record some of those old episodes. We may have to do that.
That's a good idea.
We might do that.
But you might ruin the gold.
You never know. There's magic on those episodes, even if it sounds like we were recording in like a tin can.
Yeah, and while we're talking about improving our sound quality, I can't forget to mention Sunday, our lovely patron and friend of the podcast, who made a generous donation that actually got us this bomb-ass equipment.
Yeah, she made a donation via PayPal, which was awesome, and we were able to upgrade equipment. And of course, patrons, you guys help make everything happen, so we greatly appreciate that. We love all of our listeners. And I just found out something really interesting today, Dylan. Mind blown.
Yeah, I think this actually threw you for a loop.
Koalas have fingerprints which are almost identical to those of humans. They are so similar that even scientists find it hard to tell them apart because of the pattern, the shape, and the size of the ridges. And under a microscope, the ridges look exactly the same.
So basically it's saying that humans and koalas have the exact same kind of fingerprints.
Yeah, so how do we know that there are not like lots of innocent people in prison and that there's just a series of murderous koalas out there committing crimes and leaving behind their little koala fingerprints? And people are getting blamed for these crimes.
Well, I think that is sounds like it could be a possibility. I think we need to look into that.
Menacing koala gangs roving the streets.
Yeah, and then some other koala facts I've heard before. They're not sweet and snuggly. They're ill-tempered and rather mean, and they smell really bad.
Here's a little known fact for everyone. Your mind's about to be blown once again for the second time in like a minute.
Oh my God, let them gather their mind.
Richard Ramirez was a koala.
Oh, that's why he stank.
That's why he was stank.
And that explains a lot.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
No one noticed if he was out there in California living under the radar as a koala.
Well, that's what happens. These little koala fuckers are dangerous.
Okay, well, thank you for those fun koala facts.
I love that you're just like, okay.
This is like the Nature Minute on NPR or whatever, the Naturalist Minute.
Yes.
Yeah, you've been sponsored by the Mountain Murder Zoo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, we are dog sitting this week, so that's fun.
It's true. We are dog sitting my daughter's little cute long-haired chihuahua, and he looks just like a little fox.
He is adorable, and I want him, and Dylan won't let me have one.
Well, you can have one. I just said you can't have that one because she kind of loves that dog.
Yeah, no. I just want a dog.
We'll shoot a picture out there and let people judge for themselves.
Yeah, we will. Warning, this episode contains graphic depictions of animal violence, and I know we have a lot of pet lovers out there, so if that's not your cup of tea, you might want to skip through this episode, but I will give another warning when we come up on that part.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's kind of messed up, because sometimes we dive straight into murder without any kind of a warning, but, the pet violence. It needs a warning, too. Maybe we should do more warnings on the other stuff. Just kidding.
Teenage rebellion ain't what it used to be, Dylan. All teens go through similar phases. The need for independence, a separate identity, testing authority. It's part of growing up. It's also linked to developmental changes in the brain that will eventually help them become analytical adults. But what do we say about teenage rebellion that turns deadly?
Well, I think we would say, often, you see teens and you think they're just being, as people say, dumb kids, making poor choices, and you think they'll outgrow all that stuff because we all did it to some degree or another. But I think a lot of times people don't realize that it's crossing the line into dangerous territory.
Roderick Justin Ferrell was born into poverty on March 28, 1980, in the small town of Murray, Kentucky. With a population in the teen thousands, Murray is off US 641 in a tourist region known as the Western Waterlands of Kentucky. It lies just a few miles from the Kentucky-Tennessee line. It is best known as the home to Murray State University. Murray is generally considered a nice place to live with welcoming people, mostly identifying themselves as Christian, and it feels safe. The cost of living is relatively low. And I bring up the fact that most people there identify themselves as Christian because that's going to play a big part in our story.
So it's predominantly religious and predominantly Christian.
This is like the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Oh, okay. That's a good way to put it.
Rod's parents were teenagers. His mother, Sandra Gibson, and his father, Rick Ferrell, were 17 years old when Rod was born. The marriage literally lasted about 30 days before Rick left. I thought you were going to say something.
I was saying, did I not speak out loud?
I thought you were saying something about the 30-day marriage. Okay, well, we'll move along. He joined the military, from what I found in reports, abandoning his young family. Sandra and the new baby moved in with her parents, Rosetta and Harold Gibson. Rod wouldn't reunite with his father until he was 7 years old. And the last time he would actually see his dad, he was age 9.
Yeah, I will say of a 30-day marriage, I think that's a good sign you shouldn't have got married.
Needless to say, Rick didn't want a relationship with his son. Though the Gibsons were Pentecostal, Rod would later claim his grandfather was a member of the Black Mask, an occult group.
Oh, I want some merch from the Black Mask occult group.
As young as 5 years old, Rod told psychiatrists later that his grandfather sexually abused him, even allowing his friends to assault the child. Rod says he witnessed a human sacrifice during a ritual when he was a small boy. And according to family members, Sandra confronted her father about the alleged sexual abuse. Rod witnessed this encounter, and it caused him great trauma to watch his mother confront his grandfather.
Well, yeah, for one, I mean, that's a horrible situation for anyone to have to deal with, and I'm glad that she did confront him, but the child, that should have been done outside of the child's purview.
Right. I mean, it's probably not the best idea to have your child on your hip.
No.
While you're screaming and shouting at someone.
Is purview, was that the right use of purview?
Sure.
Okay.
So I'm going to get you a dictionary and you can look that up. Sandra's sister would later openly say that both she and Sandra were molested by Harold. But Harold adamantly denies the accusations, saying that Rod lived in a dream world. Sandra worked on and off as an exotic dancer and an escort at times to make ends meet. She bounced from one unsavory boyfriend to the next. She was keenly interested in the occult, particularly vampirism. Or if you're from the mountains, vampires.
It's a dang Dracula.
Them vampires.
Oh, I must report that was a misuse of the word purview. Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, that's fine, Dylan. We understand.
It's okay.
You have a GED at school.
Oh. Wow. Damn.
You bring it up all the time.
Yeah, I did drop out of high school 10th grade because circumstances beyond my control and started working.
Well, I'm going to download an app for you to research and study SAT vocabulary words. How's that?
Well, you know what? I derailed it. I accept it. So I'm going to go ahead and finish it off. All my vocabulary comes from context clues from reading a lot. So oftentimes I just know maybe how to use the word. I'm often right 99% of the time. That time I was wrong, and I admitted it.
Hooked on phonics worked for you.
Oh, my God.
Okay. Can we get back to this?
Yep, getting back on the track.
Okay. At a young age, Rod began playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Now, what year is this?
Well, he was born in 80, so he started playing D&D probably in the late 80s, early 90s, when he was, anywhere from like 10 to 12.
Okay, so that's maybe a little bit past the time I'm thinking of D&D, but there was a big scare. Parents were scared to death. I was listening to this thing about the history of D&D and all this. It was quickly connected to occult, the devil. I mean, they just didn't get the wizards and the
Possibly
goblins.
in like the early 80s, during like the
yes.
Satanic Panic
I think so.
era.
And so I'm sure that those thoughts and people remember that, and that same sentiment maybe is still swirling around by late 80s, early 90s.
Of course, it seems with Little Nas X's latest video, we're headed toward like another Satanic Panic.
I'm just not even sure. I tried to watch that video, and well, A, I couldn't take it serious, and B, I was just like, this is obviously done like to make a statement of some kind. And then, like, you agree with him or disagree with him. I don't really have an opinion on Little Nas X. I've never listened to any of his music.
I was given the devil lap dances long before it was cool, okay?
Yeah, but anyway, he's doing people hating on him left and right is just giving him free publicity. So there you go.
Well, I think if anything, it's just genius,
Well, yeah.
No publicity is bad publicity, right?
Well, that's the thing.
Unless you're like Jeffrey Epstein, and then I would say that's probably bad publicity. Okay, so playing D&D. I've actually never played D&D, and I don't know a whole lot about it.
I don't know a lot about it, and I've sat in on a couple of games but didn't partake. But I do know that the people who play it are really, really into it, and they seem to really enjoy themselves. Some of these games can last hours and hours.
Isn't there something about a hellish rebuke? Doesn't Ben Kissel talk about the hellish rebuke all the time on last podcast? Does that have something to do with D&D?
I'm sure there is a lot of hellish...
Or is that like a Magic the Gathering? I don't know.
I don't know, but...
I get all my games confused.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not... It's only limited by your imagination.
The only game I like to play is Tiddlywinks.
I used to play pickup sticks as a very small child.
And did you?
Yeah, and you know what my mom would do? She would be smoked out on the reefers.
She'd throw them damn sticks like way far away and be like, go get them.
I fell for this over and over because I guess I did that as a kid. Like one time, for days, my sister was going heads, you lose. Tails, I win. Heads, you lose. And she kept flipping the coin. I kept losing, like, to the point where I'm crying and frustrated. My mom's like, don't you understand, you little big-headed, muggly wart. Heads, I win. Tails, you lose. You're never going to win. And she would ask me if I want to play 52-card pickup. And it would go a couple of weeks would go by and be like, and I'd do it again. Yeah, Mom. And she would just take the cards and, like, throw them all over the room. A deck of cards and be like, pick them up.
This is why I love your mom, and I think she's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
That's the kind of shit I would do to my kids.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay. So with his mother's influence, Rod grew increasingly interested in vampires as well. As a young teenager, Rod was awkward and nerdy at school. But by 15, he had a new sense of self. He was dressing in what was described as alternative black clothing.
Ooh.
He had that goth style. I'm like, is black clothing really alternative? Because like today I went shopping and like everything I brought home was black.
Back then, after the whole goth thing kind of broke into the mainstream's consciousness, you had kids who wore black in many different styles or for many different reasons, but it was all just goth. If they saw pale skin, certain types of makeup, or any kind of outfit, it was just goth.
Yeah, I was like I was like punk rock, girl, like in high school and in college and stuff. And people would always be like, oh, you're a goth girl? And I would be like, get your subgenres right, bitch. I'm punk.
No, I'm not a goth girl.
God save the queen. I'm a punk rocker. Yeah. Sheena was a punk rocker. I was a punk rocker. Okay, so Rod grew his hair long, often dyeing it black, and listening to heavy metal music.
Oh, I'll do a Henry Zabrowski. No.
Gotta play the Dio. Okay, so he was the kid lurking around the halls in the black trench coat at school. Rod and Sandra were playing the role-playing game Vampire the Masquerade. I've heard of this game, but I, again, am not familiar with it.
Oh, is it an electronic game or is it when you play like in person?
Yeah, it's like a role-playing game.
Okay.
I guess it's equivalent to like Magic or D&D.
Okay. We're probably pissing some like true knowable people off.
Well, you can always email us at mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com and tell us that we're fucking dumb. But I will look into some of these games. Maybe we should start playing them, Dylan. And Rod's interest just plummeted into darkness. In 1993, Sandra and Rod moved to Florida for a while. Rod found he was an outcast there as well. He embraced his role as a freak, a weirdo, while he was in Florida. He began dating a girl named Janine LeClaire, who was best friends with Heather Wendorf. Rod and Wendorf became fast friends. So like Rod, Heather considered herself to be somewhat of a misfit. Heather lived a middle-class lifestyle with parents who were still together. She had an older sister, Jennifer, who was incredibly popular. Jennifer was a great student, a cheerleader, and participated in a lot of other clubs at their high school. Jennifer had a host of friends and often entertained them at her house, throwing pool parties and such. And from what I understand, the Wendorfs, as parents, were kind of considered to be like the cool, like more lenient parents. They didn't mind having kids over for slumber parties, everybody staying up late.
So they had this kind of popular daughter who was into all these activities and sports and clubs and all this stuff. And I'm sure she probably had a lot of friends over often. And they were cool with it.
Yeah. And people describe them as just like they're really fun parents. Like they were, cool and just really like welcoming and made you feel like they were your second mom and dad kind of people. And Jennifer would earn an early acceptance to Florida State University. Heather, who was a talented artist and musician, she played piano, oboe, and xylophone. But like many kids, Heather felt a tinge of jealousy. It is likely that Heather felt she stood in her sister's shadow.
Well, I mean, that sounds like a lot to, siblings always feel like they're competing one way or the other. And that sounds like I would be intimidated if I had a sibling in doing all those things, I think, to a certain degree.
Well, by all appearances, Jennifer projected this image of perfection. And Heather began wearing all black, ripped up fishnets, dyeing her hair purple and other colors. Heather was rebelling more than Jennifer ever had. Now, according to one report, at some point, Heather had been sent to live with her aunt, but was quickly returned home for refusing to obey the house rules, and she was caught sneaking a boy in.
That's the ultimate sin at that age, right?
Pretty much. All in all, both girls were spoiled by their parents. Heather and Jennifer had their own phone lines, which we all know in the 90s, if you had your own telephone line, you were like hot shit.
Yeah, because then you can just gab on and on with your friends. And your parents are never taking up the phone. You're the only one that answers it. It's usually in your bedroom, so you're getting that element of privacy. So yeah, it was a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and this was like pre-cell phone. People had cell phones, but not like today. So
yeah,
having that personal landline, it was so cool.
Yeah, back then the people that had cell phones, they weighed like 6 pounds, or they're the big bag phone, and it was always like a lawyer or something.
It's like a weapon.
Yeah.
It was like the phone on American Psycho that Patrick Bateman carries around.
Exactly.
Gigantic cordless phone. Well, the family had a pool, and Jennifer was gifted a brand new red Saturn convertible. The Wendorfs planned to buy Heather a similar new car when she turned 16.
So the Wendorfs, they're the cool parents, and it sounds like they're trying to do everything they can for their children.
And Dad had a good job. Mom was a stay-at-home mother. When she married Mr. Wendorf and he was given promotions at work, she was finally able to quit work, stay home with the girls. She volunteered at their high school. So she was like a really active mom. During their friendship, Rod introduced Heather to vampirism.
Oh, so Rod is the one who brought in the vampires.
Yeah. Her interest in the subject grew, and she obtained books on the occult, vampires, witchcraft. The Wendorfs were not impressed with Rod. He was the stringy-headed goth kid who sported an eyebrow ring, and that was kind of before it was a mainstream thing to see people with piercings. Heather began sporting a decapitated Barbie doll on her book bag, like hanging by a noose kind of thing.
Wow.
Rod and Janine began experimenting with blood drinking together. In one incident, he showed his girlfriend the altar he had built in his bedroom. Then he grabbed an X-Acto knife to slice his arm open. At this point, Heather had already been drinking from Rod. But Janine was concerned about AIDS and other bloodborne diseases that obviously come along with drinking blood, but she eventually gave into the pressure as well. Sandra threatened to move Rod away from Eustis, California. Eustis, Florida, all the time. So when she finally told him that she had had enough and was moving away, he was dismissive. Sandra caught Rod and Janine in an act of blood drinking.
Yeah, so I mean, you got peer pressure, and it's always happened, different kinds of forms of it about different things, but being peer pressured to drink blood with your friend, drink each other's blood.
As a parent, Dylan, and you've got 3 kids. I have 2 kids, so together we're like a big fucking Brady Bunch like group over here. What would you do if you caught one of our children drinking blood from another person?
I would be...
Would you flip out?
Yes, but not for the reasons you're thinking. Just because of the health issues and the pure danger of... I mean, for A, I would be like, what the hell are you doing? But B, instantly I'd be like, are you kidding me? This person could have any kind of hepatitis or any of that, even if it's not for their own fault. You can get those through blood transfusions. You can get those, bloodborne diseases all kinds of ways. Doesn't make you a bad person. But yeah, I mean, it would just totally freak me out. And it's just kind of gross. I like the taste of my own blood, right? Remember when I ate your scab and I grossed you out?
Oh, you're so gross.
You can't. Yeah, I'm sharing that with our listeners.
I want to throw up.
Yeah, you had good scab, though.
That was disgusting.
It was just little.
I don't know what the fuck you do. You're gross, okay?
I like scabs.
You're nasty. He's like, oh, it's like beef jerky. Eating my fucking scab, y'all. Is that true love? Question mark?
I must have you inside of me.
Oh, God. Well, we can arrange that.
Oh, I was just kidding.
Sandra flipped out. She started smashing stuff in Rod's room and ordering Rod and Janine out of her house. Rod laughed it off, telling his girlfriend, don't worry about her. She's just mad that I won't sire her, which means cross her over.
Ooh.
So his own mother wants to be turned into a vampire. Very strange, right?
Oh, is she really does want that, or is he just saying that?
No, she really does. And we'll talk about more of that later. Janine thought Rod and his mom were lunatics after Rod said he had seen his mother levitate and believed she was possessed by a demon. Clearly, the dynamic between mother and son was dysfunctional, if not totally deranged. After this incident, Rod was leaving the house when his mother told him he had to stay. He put a knife to her throat, telling Sandra he'd drain her completely if she didn't leave him and his friends alone.
Oh, so he's just going to suck her dry.
As he left the house, his mother screamed at him, I hate you. I wish you were never born.
Well, that's a very mean thing to say, even in a heated argument. Don't you think that's like one of the worst things you could say to a kid and arguing with them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just can't even wrap my head around that, I guess.
No.
And then Sandra moved Rod back to Kentucky sometime in December of 1995. At school, Rod had transformed, as other kids recalled, from a geek to like a total weirdo. He was belligerent, skipped school, used drugs, and the drugs ranged from LSD to PCP, crank, and even heroin.
Well, I mean, that's pretty hardcore.
Yeah. I mean, he was not just like, hey, I'm going to smoke this doobie.
Still a couple of beers.
Listening to the Doobie Brothers, okay?
No.
Whatever he could get his hands on as far as drugs, like he was willing to give it a try. Sandra was not a mom who was busy being a mom. Sandra was busy being Sandra. Rod ran wild. He had little to no supervision. He was hanging out at graveyards until 3 a.m. and ultimately got kicked out of the 9th grade. Rod had managed to earn straight Fs every class.
Now that takes dedication. Because unless you really just don't give a damn about any of it, you're going to mess around and get a D here or there and a C maybe by just showing up, right?
Most of the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, that just takes, I mean, that's done on purpose. I mean, it takes effort to not care that much. I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, my daughter's a prime example of that. She's in there on the couch right now. He was then arrested for criminal trespassing at the high school. In Kentucky, Rod and Sandra moved into subsidized housing, into an apartment, and got on welfare. Her boyfriend, a tattoo artist named Smoke,
Oh my goodness. If my daughter brought
was living with them.
someone home and is like, this is my boyfriend, his name's anything like Smoke or Snake or anything like that, I think I would just die.
Let's be fair. We already make fun of him, and his name isn't Smoke.
Yes, I'm saying if his name was Smoke.
But that's mostly just because he doesn't eat vegetables. And we're like, how are you a grown man and you like refuse to eat vegetables? It's like become an ongoing joke with us.
I'm just like, how are you alive? You have to,
How do you take a shit, sir?
that's really what I want to know.
Dylan's like, you just wait till you're 30.
Yeah, it's all fun and games till your colon acts up.
Your bowels are going to be backed up, boy. Social services had been involved several times and once again opened a case on Rod Ferrell. On drugs, Rod would fly into rages, breaking furniture. The substance abuse, compounded with emotional problems, was a recipe for disaster. He befriended another boy who went to high school with him named Stephen Murphy, and he called himself Jaden.
Okay.
He's anointed himself as Jaden. He also wore a black cloak and was into vampirism. There's a lot, I should just say real quick, there's a lot of fucking Kentucky vampire cults happening. So we've got Jaden with this vampire cult we're going to be talking about here in just a second. And just across the way, over in Pikeville, Kentucky, there was a completely different vampire cult that we covered back in 2019.
Yes, right.
So what's happening in Kentucky? Why you got all these little vampires sprouting up?
Well, I think it just became really cool to actually on our other podcast, Batshit Crazy, we talk about vampires and the history of vampires, and we actually talked about the modern day vampires. There's supposedly more than 5,000 people nationwide that identify as needing blood to sustain themselves or energy.
Jaden was the leader of a goth group known as His Family or The Family. And the family dabbled into bloodletting, blood drinking, and Jaden was known to sire others, which meant turn them into vampires. Rod and Jaden dropped out of school by 16, and both were unemployed with no prospects. However, Jaden's antics included mostly walking around town with his family, freaking out the locals, and then drinking and partying at an abandoned building they had nicknamed the Vampire Hotel.
Dude, I kind of want to hang out with these kids.
Do you?
Yeah, maybe back then.
Okay, I thought you meant now.
Just
you
for
would
fun.
fucking hang out with them now, you weirdo. You
Just
know you
for
would.
fun. No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, you'd like me hanging upside down in your trench coat with your goth hair,
Oh,
with your little emo hair. Dylan has kind of long hair now, and he's been like putting it in his face, and he does like this whole goth kid or like emo kid character.
Yeah, I totally do. It would be the lead goth kid on South Park. I can do that pretty good.
Life is only pain. In January of 1996, Jaden decided Rod needed to cross over.
Oh, so just to become a full-blown vampire.
Yes.
But see, that's interesting is because they got to know there's really no one's exhibiting supernatural abilities. No one is super strong or can turn into a bat or wolf or any of that
How
stuff.
do you know?
Okay.
How do you know that? Maybe they were. Maybe they were turning little bats and like flying around like little wings and stuff.
Well, that would be really cool.
Hanging out in my attic and shit. Flying out of chimneys at night.
Would you give up the sun for the rest of your life?
Yeah, I'm totally nocturnal.
Okay.
I mean, I'm an insomniac. I would be fine with just being a night creature. Creature of the night.
Oh, my goodness.
Creature of the night!
Ooh.
That's my Columbia
Oh.
from Rocky Horror.
Oh.
Okay. The initiation ritual included drinking blood. Then they meditated for a few hours under a tree.
Groovy.
Yeah.
And they were high as hell.
Let's get under a tree. Rod became convinced he was a 500-year-old vampire named Vesago.
Oh, that's a pretty groovy name.
Vesago?
Yeah.
While in Kentucky, Rod and Heather communicated often, making long-distance phone calls. Richard Wendorf was not pleased with the $60 to $80 phone bills every month. When he would grumble about it, Heather would snap, "I'll pay for it then."
Oh, man. It's hard to even remember back then, like the long distance. People would always be like, call me back after 9 and things like that. And then,
Or you'd get like a calling card.
yeah,
So make that, like, because I remember in college buying calling cards so I could call my friends who went to school out of state
yeah.
to talk.
Yeah, and then it was the text calls, and and now I guess it's data.
Yep. Well, 1 month, Rod racked up $1,000 in phone charges, which Sandra couldn't pay, so the phone was subsequently cut off. Rod and Heather exchanged letters instead. Heather would rail against her parents, how much she hated them, how her home life was a living hell. This escalated when Heather indicated that some kind of abuse was taking place in the home.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess you got to figure something's up.
Heather's behavior escalated as well. She stopped eating. She would slash her arm with a razor blade. Heather resented her mother's involvement in her life, from curfews to simple things like being asked to tidy up her room. They would have these massive blow-ups. In her letters, she would write things like, blood would taste really good about now, and would discuss dreams that she would have, which often included killing babies and drinking their blood.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was almost speechless there. I'm not sure how you would respond if my friend was telling me all this stuff. Now they're all entertaining themselves with the, all this fantasy thought and, kind of sharing and all just their imagination, really.
Yeah.
But it's like they're kind of becoming convinced that this is for real.
Rod's like, is this a satire? Have you been reading Jonathan Swift's Modest Proposal? Ha ha ha. Anyway.
A vampire named Rod.
I know, right? Rod. That's like a porn star name.
It is. And even if there's a Rod out there listening right now, I support you fully in all your endeavors in life. But that's totally a porn star name.
If my name was Rod, I would make everybody call me Hot Rod.
I would be Rod the Bod.
Would you?
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, I'd be like Hot Rod. Because there's a double entendre there.
Oh, I'd be Ramrod.
Oh,
Let's move on.
Okay. Rod was becoming increasingly more violent. His ideas and behaviors did not sit well with Jaden and the family. Rod wanted more than to just hang out in Walmart and McDonald's parking lots with a bunch of wannabe goth nerds who wore fake things.
Yeah, these are the lifestylers. These are the fashionistas.
The fashion vampires?
Yeah, these are the real vampires, the real modern day vampires who think they truly need blood to, sustain themselves, would kind of scoff at these kids. They're just play acting.
Like in True Blood at Fantasia?
Yeah.
How they would make fun of the fang bangers and stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, Rod was sitting in on psychology classes at Murray State University. Later, he would admit that he wanted to learn how to manipulate and control other people.
Well, who doesn't?
I've been trying to study that shit my whole life. He eventually broke up with Jaden and the family. Rod wanted to be a leader. He started amassing his own group, or cult of vampires. In May of 1996, his mom caught him carving a massive upside-down cross into his chest.
Yeah. I mean, so, that's I guess there's a whole industry that does, branding and scarification and things like that. And people get to how would you say that? People
express themselves
however they want, but that would definitely bother me as a parent. If you're just kind of, and for one, it's not going to be like professional in any way. It's just kind of hacking into yourself.
When we start our own vampire cult, are we going to brand people like NXIVM, or are we going to carve things into their flesh?
How big of a narcissistic person do you have to be to want to brand your initials on a person?
It's strange.
That's out there.
I'm
right?
sorry, but that whole NXIVM thing is just
it's hard to process.
I don't understand. One night, Rod and his friends, okay, here's my animal cruelty warning, okay? So if you are bothered by this, I would skip ahead a minute or two. So one night, Rod and his friends broke into the county animal shelter. Rod stomped a puppy to death, and they tore the legs off another puppy.
Why?
Because they're sick fucks.
The poor little puppies couldn't.
And they were like Labrador puppies.
I just don't get it.
How fucking cute.
Even as a
Makes me
kid,
so
I didn't
sad.
aimlessly stomp bugs and things. You know what I mean? Or frogs or anything like. I just didn't see the point.
You didn't.
I never played God.
Okay, well, I used to really love to pour salt on slugs and watch them melt.
Did you really do that?
Yeah.
That's horrible.
And then I like to pull the legs off of little
Insects?
beetles.
You pulled their legs off?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Who did I marry?
A sociopath.
No, I'm sorry. That's psychopath.
Well, either way.
I don't know.
Look,
I don't know. I
look.
don't know if I can carry on.
Look, I was a little country ass kid, okay? I used to run through cow patties without shoes on and get cow shit up to my thighs. And I guess melting slugs and pulling the legs off of damn beetles was just the thing that we did, okay?
Where's the salt, Martha? Heather's got it out there on the deck, melting slugs.
Yeah, while I had my dip of red steel in, and I was like 6, okay? So what?
Jeez
You wanna
Louise.
fight me?
That's country right there.
Yeah, I know. That's how you know I'm really drunk, when I'm like, can I have some dip?
It's true. And she will get a chaw.
Yeah, and put it in, and then I'll just be spitting all night. I'm real classy.
Man, we're getting derailed a lot tonight.
Who did
but
you marry?
It's okay, though. I think people want us to share.
Do they?
Maybe.
Now everybody's going to hate me because I, like, fucked up a slug.
They probably wants to share the rest of the story.
Well, actually, my grandma used to do it, too, because she didn't like them getting in her, like, tomatoes and stuff.
Everybody's grandma was melting slugs with the
So
damn
that's
salt.
where I got that from, okay?
Okay.
The sheriff's department immediately, like, zoned in on Rod Ferrell and even brought him in for questioning. Like, they were pretty sure that this had happened. And a lot of people in town were coming forward with stories that they'd heard that Rod and his vampire cult were the ones responsible for this break-in.
Well, I mean, people are going to notice these kids around or these young people around. You know what I mean? And some people are going to be like, oh, that's goofy. Some people are going to be really disturbed because they just don't get where they're coming from.
Let's pause for just a moment, Dylan, and hear from our sponsors. For months, Rod and Heather had been discussing ways to get her out of Florida. Again, she's telling Rod all kinds of stories about her home life. It's just fucking terrible. She hates her parents.
Uh-oh.
All that stuff. So with law enforcement pressuring him over the animal shelter break-in, Rod thought it was a good time to get the hell out of Kentucky. He hatched a plan. Rod Ferrell and his friend Scott would head down to Florida. His ex-girlfriend Janine's birthday was coming up, and he thought he could pick up both girls and they'd all run away together to New Orleans.
Oh, so he's going to, okay, so he's going to get out of there. He figures he's worn out his welcome in his local town. And
He's not getting lucky in Kentucky, so he's got to move on down south.
And he's going to lead them on kind of this big adventure to New Orleans.
Yeah.
Which is always drawn vampires and vampire culture.
The Big Easy.
And so I guess he thinks he's some hot shit for having come up with this incredible plan.
You know it. He's like patting himself on the back. He's all like, come on, dust your shoulders off, Rod.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Damn, stay clean, Bam.
Heather's sister Jennifer caught her cutting herself one evening, and Jennifer had seen a personal ad in the newspaper written by someone named Zoe, that's Xoey, who was seeking vampire kindreds. Heather opened up to her sister, explaining that she had actually placed the ad in the newspaper, but that it didn't have anything to do with Rod or her best friend Janine. Jennifer, after witnessing her sister cutting herself, learns that this classified ad was actually her younger sister, calls their mother, and her name is Naomi, but everything I read, resources, I refer to her as Ruth, which is her middle name, so I guess that's what she went by, so we're going to be calling her Ruth. She called Ruth into the bedroom. When Ruth pressed to see Heather's arm, her daughter bucked up on her. She's got her arms covered, refusing to show her mom these cuts. Ruth suggested that Heather should go to counseling, and Heather blew up at her mother, shouting that Jennifer was the one who was drinking, she had missed curfew like 3 nights in a row, and then pointed out that the good girl cheerleader had recently wrecked her car, and she was the wild one, and that's the one that everybody should be worried about.
Well, I mean, it sounds like she's getting into stuff and definitely changing and people noticing. Yeah, can we say, I know people spell names differently, But that's got to be one of the most interesting takes on Zoe. Xoey?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's like really pretentious.
You think so?
Yeah, I do.
I think you would have to explain to people a lot how your name's pronounced.
Well, Ruth felt there wasn't much that she could do. There had been a lot of focus on Jennifer lately, to the point that Heather almost felt like she had been a shadow in the house because this good girl had started doing the bad stuff, sneaking out with her boyfriend and drinking and whatever. And so Heather kind of liked it because she was able to sort of slip around and do what she wanted. But I think it also kind of hurt her because she felt ignored.
Well, I mean, you have the kind of golden child. I don't know if they went that far, but she got all the attention for good reasons, I reckon. And now she's, I guess in her mind, she's doing bad things and her sister's messing up, but she's still getting all the attention. So, yeah, I mean, I could see that affecting her like that.
Well, because Jennifer gets all the positive attention and even gets all the attention when she's acting out.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of kids have this attitude of like, I want to be left alone. Like, leave me alone. Don't bother me. And in some ways they like that. But I think they also get upset or pissed off when their parents do just like leave them alone. Because then they're like, I'm being ignored. No one loves me.
Yeah, I think you're right.
In their complicated little heads. Well, during a phone call with Rod, Heather expressed her desire to get the book out of Florida. He told her that she could come to Kentucky, but that didn't sound very appealing to Heather, who dreamed of traveling to exotic places. Not Kentucky.
She got exotic places money?
She don't got no money, Dylan. You know, Rod, if you're planning on kidnapping me, she said, you're going to have to kill my parents, because if they're alive, they'll never let me go.
See, I suspected this is where this may be heading down that familiar road. And it's always, this is when it's dropped. It's like the parents or the family member or whoever is the problem. They're standing in the way of us being together, doing what we want, and it never turns out good.
Parents are cock blocking my fun.
Yeah.
Well, he told her not to worry about it. He would take care of her parents when the time came. Dun, 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 dun. When Rod was a small child, one of his best memories was a family vacation he'd taken with his mom and grandparents to New Orleans in Texas. He liked New Orleans, plus he thought if they lived there, they might be able to meet Anne Rice, author of all the vampire books.
Well, yeah, because I'm sure Anne's just kicking it, waiting for people to come up and say, aren't you Anne Rice?
She's like, I cannot wait to hang out with some 16-year-old kids who think they're vampires. Word up.
That's really original, and I'm sure no one's approached her in that capacity.
No, she's like, just wants to like cruise around. She's all like, hey, we're over here in the down near the Bywater. What's up? Scott Anderson, let's talk a little bit about Rod's little buddies here. Scott was Rod's right-hand man in this new vampire cult. He was a childhood friend who had welcomed back Rod when he returned to Kentucky. If Rod's home life was bad, then Scott's was actually a living hell. He lived in extreme poverty, often without electricity and running water, like no heat in the house. His father was a serious alcoholic who doled out violent punishments to his 4 sons and his wife. The family lived in squalor. Like, legit, almost like shacks with no windows and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I just don't know how you could live like that. If I was by myself, I wouldn't live like that.
Like old-ass trailers that had, like, cardboard up for windows and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't know how you let your family continue to live. And I know people have circumstances and it's tough sometimes. But, I mean, come on. You got to try a little bit harder than that. Social
services was always involved, and Scott even spent time in foster care. This is just kind of an example of one incident that happened. Scott's mother locked her 5-year-old son outside all day and into the evening. It was about 9 p.m. when a social worker finally showed up to the house after neighbors called and found the boy on the porch begging for something to eat.
Oh, well, that's not good.
In the freezing cold Kentucky winter.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
The mother would the mom and the dad broke up for a bit, and mom would leave the kids for days at a time, home alone without food, no electricity, no water, no heat.
Well, that's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a really bad home life. Rod and Scott studied Aleister Crowley together, and in some ways, Scott thought of Rob as the more worldly one since he had lived in Florida for a short time.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about this kid, Scott. I mean, he's completely, naive, never left this town. So he thinks Rod is a man of the world.
So, well, yeah, I guess that would kind of be true in a way, because, I mean, he's had some different experiences. It's probably actually way cooler than any of it was.
And Rod is a very well-spoken person and read a lot and speaks relatively intelligently. So I could see where Scott might just be in awe of him. Rod would tell his buddy Scott and a guy named Matt about being a killer, comparing himself to Jack the Ripper and saying he had buried body parts in various cemeteries all over town. And of course, Rod's friends just kind of laughed this off like, whatever, and didn't believe him.
Wait a second. I've got toes. I've got toes in different area. Codes in different area. Was that funny?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I said toes instead of hose.
Can't make some toes a housewife.
That's right.
Rod began dating a girl named Charity Kesey. She was a nice girl from a good family, and from reports, she instantly fell head over heels for Rod and had a high sex drive, which he welcomed. She wanted him to forget about his Florida girlfriends that he spoke fondly of during their talks. He grew very angry when he learned that Charity had already been crossed over by another vampire family.
Oh my God, she's been part of another coven, another vampire house.
She had kept this from him. How dare she?
He should have known with his telekinetic, all-knowing vampire powers.
It's like Richard Marx. You should have known better than to fall in love with a vampire girl.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've heard that Marx hit.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm sorry. I'm the 80s queen. Let's see. So, during the summer of 96, while Charity was away visiting her mother in South Dakota, Rod fell into a relationship with another girl. It was a college student at Murray State. It was a torrid affair, but after a while, he thought she was a pest. She had a baby and left it in Tennessee with her mother after Rod threatened to sacrifice the child.
Jesus. There's just there's a lot of some significant dysfunction mixed in with this group of people. I mean, it's like they're trying to impress each other in some weird way, and at the same time exert some kind of power that none of them are even in a truly powerful position. It's very strange.
And this girlfriend with the baby, I believe her name was Shy. She was really into Wicca and would try to cast spells, love spells and things like that.
Ooh.
To get Rod to love her. And the more she did that and he would find out, the more he was just a dick to her.
Your magic does not work on me.
I am a vampire. I'm 500 years old. Can we go buy Long John Silver's on the way home?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I thought you lived off of blood and human energy.
Well, after Charity came home, he ended up getting back together with her. Janine's parents were already not pleased with her relationship with Rod, and that's his ex-girlfriend in Florida. In the beginning, her mother had found these letters that were written between Janine and Rod, and they were mostly the little puppy love letters you would expect from 15-year-old kids. But as the months went on, the letters grew much darker in tone, and her parents didn't like the occult book she had. Janine's parents, after finding these letters from Rod and artwork that were very concerning, decapitated people, sacrificed, little drawings of people being sacrificed, just weird shit.
So edgy.
Yeah. I mean, her parents were like, no. Janine and Heather felt violated when, after her discoveries, Suzanne LeClaire placed a call to Ruth Wendorf to tattle about what the girls had been doing.
Oh, so she's just going to dial them out.
Dial them out. And their relationship with Rod, and warn Ruth that Rod was not a good guy and that Heather needed to have no contact with him. In early November of 96, more dysfunction, Dylan. Sandra, Rod's mother, was charged with soliciting rape and soliciting sodomy. Sandra had been mailing sexually explicit letters to Jaden, the other rival vampire King or whatever.
The Vampire Prince.
The Vampire Prince of Murray, Kentucky. So Sandra had been mailing Jaden's 14-year-old brother these letters. These nasty, nasty, like penthouse forum types of letters.
So, yeah, soliciting rape and soliciting sodomy.
Yep.
So she sent him these dirty letters, essentially, describing all kinds of kind of kink,
Like
right?
she's trying to body rock knock the boots all night with this kid.
Oh, man, I bet this kid's vibrating reading these damn letters.
Actually, the kid was repulsed.
Oh, really?
The more, like, detail that she would, like, provide in these letters, the more that this kid was, like, mortified and, like, grossed out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, it must have been pretty rough.
Jamie's mother was mortified when she found out that Sandra had kissed her son, so Jamie's the 14-year-old, that Sandra had kissed the boy while he was hanging out at her house with Rod and Jaden. Sandra proceeded to write these letters asking the boy to have sex with her, asking permission to sodomize him, and recognizing that he was very young. I mean, these letters are, like, fucked up. She's all like, I know you're very young, but you're just so tasty.
Yeah, I was just kidding earlier. This is
Your little boy morsel.
a predator and a young person. I mean, yeah. Yeah, it's sick.
She detailed vile things that she wanted to do to this 14-year-old. Sandra is 35 years old at this time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a molestation.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, you're describing molestation to some poor kid.
Well, some people would describe Sandra as that she almost seemed like she was super immature and that she was stuck. Like, she mentally acted like she was about 14.
Oh, and that could be possible, but that still is not going to change.
Well, no,
the fact
I'm not
that-
making excuses.
Oh,
but
I know
people
you're
just
not.
said that she just seemed like really stunted or something.
Right, yeah,
Like,
I know.
She just couldn't get past the fact that she was not, like, a teenager
Wow.
still. Like, she kind of lived and acted like she was. She had even asked the boy for pictures. She sent him a house key. And by this time, Rod had broken off his friendship with Jaden. They had some big falling out in August of 96 and had gotten into a physical fight with each other. And Rod had filed a criminal complaint against Jaden for assault and had a no contact order against Jaden.
Oh, so the whole thing's kind of disintegrating.
It's just, yeah. So he's broken up with Jaden and the family, started his own new vampire cult, but then his mama's still trying to get with Jaden's little brother.
Jeez.
I wonder if Sandra's going to tell Rod, you need to call Jamie your new stepdad.
I don't know. It's almost like an uncle cousin.
Honey, can you open up your stepdaddy's juice box? No, he has a hard time with the straws. He has a hard time punching that little straw in that Capri Sun. Can you help him?
He's trying to punch that Capri Sun and put the damn straw through his arm.
I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of, like, pedophilia, but I just think Sandra's, like, a sicko. Rod went to his friend Dana Cooper's apartment. She lived in the same building, and they had become friends. Dana was, like, a bit older. She was, like, 19, employed, living in this apartment by herself. And she's kind of, like, homely and, like, not very cool, I guess. So she really was captivated by Rod and just latched on to him, like, as someone that was cool and that, like, it made her cool to hang out with him kind of thing.
Yeah, and from a person like that, Rod's, I'm sure, going to get some type of adoration.
Of course.
And feel special.
Yeah, just studying Dana, I mean, I don't know another word to use except that she seemed kind of pathetic.
Well, I mean, you know, maybe she's sheltered or all this, maybe low self-esteem and all these issues she's dealing with. But it's the exact type of person Rod's going to want to rotate or revolve around him.
Like he can prey on this person.
Yeah, and he can feel superior.
Well, a lot of people found Rod very, like, mesmerizing. He was charismatic. I mean, a lot of people really thought he was just like, wow, just so different and like just captivated their attention. Dana and Charity were hanging out on this particular evening, and Rod announced that he was planning to go to Florida. Now, one report that I read said that Charity didn't like the idea of Rod visiting Florida because his ex-girlfriend was there and that she wanted to go along. But later, Charity would testify and say that Rod threatened her with a baseball bat and forced her to go.
Oh, so either she's lying or it's true, right? And maybe she's just trying to distance herself.
Well, yeah. I mean, it
From
seems
something
like
that happened.
it would be very self-serving to say, well, he made me go along, after we get through the story and you find out, like, what happens when they go to Florida. Dana, being kind of worried about Charity, because she's younger and Dana's like feeling protective, says she wants to go along too on this trip. So the 4 friends, Scott Anderson, Charity, and Dana, along with Rod, they pile into Scott's rusty old Buick, heading down south with little money, and they're in a very unreliable car.
We've heard that before.
They're driving to Florida in this old clunker.
I could never do it, even at a younger age. My just worrying about things.
Yeah, I'm like way too anxious.
Yes. I could not stand to take off in these circumstances.
I would always be afraid, like, oh my God, when my car breaks down.
Yeah, even if I'm riding with someone, I'm like, what are we going to do? How are we going to finance this? How, who's got gas? We don't even have money, Yeah, this is a dumb idea.
Ooh, let the dogs out. I'd be thinking of all these things. So somehow they managed to make it to Eustis, Florida, where they stayed with some friends of Rod's in an apartment. I think the person's name was Shannon that they were hanging out with. Janine was pretty surprised when Rod showed up the day before her 16th birthday, which was November the 24th. Like, he had been saying in letters that he was going to astrally project himself to her birthday, and he would be coming down, and he was going to take them away from all of this, like Calgon. Just take them away. But she just didn't believe it, and here he shows up. He met up with Heather at a cemetery and hung out with her. And on the 24th of November, Heather also had come over to Janine's house, and Suzanne LeClaire noticed that Heather seemed really sad in appearance. She seemed depressed and worried, and Suzanne asked the girl if she was okay, to which Heather replied, it's just teenage stuff. On the morning of the 25th, Jennifer and Ruth had this big conversation about the girls' behaviors. Ruth said Heather was getting too big for her britches.
Oh, she's filling her oats.
Which is a statement I've heard all my life. I think that's a real country statement.
Yep, getting too big for your breeches.
For your breeches. And Jennifer was kind of being wild, as I mentioned before. She had been like staying out late with her boyfriend and had been caught like drinking and stuff. So mom's like, y'all are both giving me gray hairs. Jennifer suggested that when she got home from her job at Publix that night, she was a cashier at Publix, that they have a family meeting where they could just all sit down and talk and get everything out in the open. That Monday evening, Rod called Heather from his friend's apartment to say they needed to get out of Florida. Like, if we're going to run away, we got to do it now. And he told Heather to pack a bag and to tell Janine that it was time to go. Heather met up with him at the cemetery. She was trying to buy some time because she wasn't exactly... I guess in her mind she had talked about running away, but when it came down to like the brass tacks of like, we're going to do this, she was like, well, second guessing it.
Well, yeah, it's one thing to be carrying on with friends or trying to impress each other, but when the rubber hits the road and this shit's real... Yeah, I think it would be natural to have second thoughts.
So she meets up at the cemetery. She's kind of trying to, like, buy some time. Like, well, I don't know. Don't you think that we ought to wait? Shouldn't we have some money before we go? Like, making up a lot of excuses. And this is where Rod expressed that they needed to hit the road, like, ASAP. So Heather ran home and flew into her bedroom to pack a bag. She even took the time to jot down a note, which would later be found in a bathroom, in, like, the family bathroom or whatever. Dear Mom and Dad and Jenny, I don't have much time, but I must say that I love you all so very much. I'm leaving for good, but I don't want you to worry about me because I will be fine. I had to go with Janine because she needs someone to look after her. Please don't try to find us. Just know that I'll miss you and will always love you, Heather.
Well, damn.
So that is the note she left for her parents.
Oh, that would freak me out.
Yeah, as a parent, finding that note, would you be like... what the hell?
I'd be devastated.
I would be so scared.
I'd be scared, mad, all that
like
at once.
Frantically, driving around trying to find my kid, freaking out. Yeah. Heather went with Charity and Dana to say goodbye to her boyfriend, Jeremy. So Heather had this little boyfriend. She had to go say goodbye to him because, she's leaving forever. While this is happening, because she goes in the Buick with Charity and Dana, Rod and Scott managed to creep through the woods from the cemetery where they were hanging out to the Wendorf house. Inside the garage, Rod rummaged around until he found a crowbar. Rod wasn't really positive about killing these people, he told Scott. Maybe he could just beat them and grab their car keys and get out. His plan was to steal one of the Wendorf's vehicles, like the Ford Explorer that was sitting in the driveway.
So, yeah, it sounds like he's trying to get a reliable vehicle, maybe grab some cash, some valuables out of there. This is a really stupid way to finance a road trip.
Now, I should also mention that Janine, the ex-girlfriend who happened to be Heather's best friend, had at some point drawn out a map and had mailed it to Rod. And it was a map of the Wendorf house detailing all the rooms where everything was laid out. And she gave him the information that the Wendorfs never locked their door and always left the garage door up. Now, Janine would say she'd just done this because if Rod was trying to, kidnap Heather or break Heather out of this house, he would need this map. But other people have argued that, no, it sounds more sinister. Like she was actually giving him a map so that he could go in and attack the Wendorfs.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Right?
Yeah, really.
So inside the Wendorf house, they find Richard Wendorf asleep on the couch. The two cut the phone cords in the bedroom. They hear the shower running in the master bath. As Rod tried slipping by, Richard's on the couch, he starts to stir. And as soon as he did, Rod attacks the man, raining down blows. I mean, the guy was never even able to lift himself up from the sofa.
What a coward to attack somebody asleep like that in their own home.
He kept beating the 49-year-old in the head until he knew he was dead. He gave him more than 20 blows to the head, then took the crowbar and drove it through Richard's heart as if he was staking a vampire.
God damn, that's vicious.
I saw the autopsy photos, and I might post a couple of these post-mortem photos on Instagram for you guys to check out if you're brave. They're not for the faint of heart. This man received a fucking violent beating. His face is unrecognizable. It's like a puddle of SpaghettiOs. It's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, a blunt force many strikes over and over and over. Just literally beating someone to death is just that's a horrible way. And what gives me what makes me upset about thinking about that type of murder is just how long were they aware of it before they're finally knocked out or dead.
This beating was so vicious that later they find one of Richard's teeth clear across the living room.
Wow.
So imagine someone striking a blow so hard that it knocks a tooth 10 feet across a room.
That's insane.
Isn't it? As he made his way into the kitchen, he was met by Ruth. She was wearing a blue bathrobe, fresh from the shower, holding a hot cup of coffee in her hand. She asked Rod, "Who are you? Are you one of Heather's friends?" And he tells her to shut up. So Ruth threw the hot cup of coffee in his face. And then she lunged at him with her fingernails and scratched his face.
Yeah, get him, Ruth.
Yeah, she's not playing around with this dude.
Man, you don't talk shit to a woman, especially with a hot cup of coffee. So I don't know what he's doing with that.
With a karate kick, he knocked Ruth to the ground, and then he started beating her with the crowbar. Rod struck her hard, hitting her in the head over a dozen times.
He's just totally out of control.
The two pilfered through the house. They took a pocket knife, Ruth's pearl necklace, and a Discover credit card, and the keys to the Ford Explorer. So once they get in the Explorer, they drove to a gas station, washed up in the bathroom, and discussed their game plan for reuniting with the girls, agreeing to tell Charity and Dana the news, but not to tell Heather. They wanted to keep Heather in the dark as long as possible.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's going to be hard to explain these circumstances you're in now.
Arriving at home around 10:30 p.m., Jennifer tiptoed into the house because she was late again and had stopped by her boyfriend's on her way home from her Publix job. So she's trying to be slick. Sneaking in the house.
Well, what they don't know can't hurt them.
Well, she saw her dad sleeping on the couch, so she quickly went to her bedroom. When she picked up the telephone, the line was dead. So she used her cell phone to call her boyfriend and say, "Hey, I made it home okay." And afterwards, she was really hungry, so she decided to go to the kitchen and grab something to eat. And that's when she made the gruesome discovery. Her mother was lying on the floor in a pool of blood with her face smashed in, and it was like something out of a horror movie. Jennifer ran to the sofa screaming for her dad, only to find him in the same condition. So the girl managed to call 911. And the 911 call is like so upsetting.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, she thinks that she's trying to sneak in, so she's thinking about her own situation, and she thinks everything's normal, and then comes upon this horrible, horrible, vicious murder scene of multiple victims, her family.
Soon the house was crawling with law enforcement. As Jennifer spoke to investigators, she told them that Heather was missing. She also remembered something her sister had said to her previously. Heather had asked Jennifer one time if she ever wanted to murder their parents. And Jennifer said no. Heather said, well, if you ever want anyone murdered, Rod will do it.
Damn, it's like they're going to loan Rod out now.
Heather stopped by Janine's house, and this is on their way out of town. She stops by Janine's house to say, it's time to go. We need to go. Janine had packed a bag, but instead of going along, she had actually gone outside and was hiding in the woods because she didn't want to go.
And I don't blame her.
When her mother noticed, it's her birthday, it's Janine's birthday, and they'd had a birthday dinner, and her mom was washing dishes. So when her mom kind of goes to check on her after she's finished cleaning up the kitchen, she finds her daughter gone. So Suzanne goes out to the car, and she's planning to drive, she's like, oh shit, my daughter's left, and she's going to try to find her. But as soon as she's about to get in the car and crank it up, her daughter steps into the headlights. When Janine tells her mom what's going on and that Heather has ran away, Suzanne tried to call the Wendorf home, but of course couldn't get through. The phone lines are dead. Suzanne drove 4 miles to the Wendorf house, only to learn that they had been killed.
Yeah, so the cops are already there, so it's this huge crime scene. Everything is a big commotion.
Yep.
Okay.
Suzanne tells the cops about Heather's plan to run away. That's why she had come. She was trying to tell the Wendorfs what was going on. So the law enforcement, the cops, they were all interested. They wanted to talk to Janine because they were like, obviously this kid knows something. We need to know the whole story. So it didn't take very long for detectives to figure out what had happened. They needed to find Heather Wendorf and Rod Ferrell. You sleepy over there, buddy?
Yeah. I'm sorry, and I'll just go ahead and apologize to our listeners. They've made me work so hard the last 2 days, but we had to record, and I love you guys.
You're just getting through it, huh?
Yeah, and I'm sorry if anyone's like, Dylan's stupid on this episode. I don't even know why I listen to Dylan. Blah, blah, blah.
Everybody loves you.
I love them.
Someone out there right now is singing you a beautiful lullaby.
Ooh.
I'm telling you a good night story right now, and then you can get us to bed.
You are? You're going to tuck me in?
I will always tuck you in. The technicians and detectives had collected over 100 latent fingerprints on the premises. The killer's marks were found everywhere, on the walls, the door handles, the bureau drawers. A forensic photographer had tracked the pattern of blood with a video camera, discovering 2 sets of bloody footprints. One was like a heavy combat style boot, and the other was like a zigzag pattern of athletic shoes.
Yeah, like some just basic athletic shoe. Yeah, there's no sophistication to this crime. It was a crime of opportunity. There's no plan. They literally got the weapon, from the garage there, as all those signs. And it's not going to. These are not masterminds covering their tracks.
16-year-old kids.
They're dumb kids
who think they're vampires.
Who think they're super cool and edgy and have committed a horrible, horrible crime.
Yeah. On the road, Rod confesses to Heather that he murdered her parents. They were at a rest stop, taking a break that night. Heather reacted without emotion and said, don't we need to get back on the road?
Well, she could be in shock. She could be surprised that he's gone this far. She could be happy that he's done this, for her in a way. Or she could be afraid to say anything negative to this man at this point. She could be terrified of him.
November 26th, so a day after the killings, a girl named Mandy Jones, who was a friend, came forward to incriminate Heather. The classmate told police that Heather had been planning to kill her parents for months. And that was all she talked about.
Oh.
Then a 14-year-old named Brandy Gonzi reported that Jeremy, that's Heather's boyfriend, had received a phone call from Heather like that day, and that Heather had bragged to Jeremy that she had a couple of guys from out of state come into town and murder her parents.
Oh, well, it sounds like Heather's into it.
By November 27th, arrest warrants had gone out on the 5 suspects: Roderick Ferrell, Charity Kesey, Howard Scott Anderson, Dana Lynn Cooper, and Heather Ann Wendorf. So Lake County officials noted that the suspects were armed and dangerous and were somewhere in the vicinity of Baton Rouge because one of the suspects had made a phone call from a payphone at the Centroplex. The Baton Rouge Police Department had been directed to look for a 1994 blue Ford Explorer that had a Kentucky plate because they had switched plates on the car, and that there was a company logo on the Explorer, which was Crown, Cork, and Steel, which was the company that Richard Wendorf was working for.
Oh, wow. That's going to make it stand out. It's a pretty good description.
So the deal is, Wednesday night, Charity had called her mother in South Dakota to ask if she could wire some money to them. Jody Remington, that's her mother, worked for the sheriff's department as a dispatcher. So she tells her daughter, the Wendorf murders are all over the news. So, you're in trouble. They're after you. They know what you've done. They're looking for you. But says, I will send you some money. So Charity tells her that there was a Howard Johnson, there was a Hojo nearby. So her mother's like, okay, you go there, I'm going to wire you some money. I'll hook you up. Then Jody immediately gets off the phone and calls the Baton Rouge Police Department to turn her daughter in.
Oh, good. Good. Okay, I was wondering about her. I was like, damn. It's like you're giving them all this info, like, what have you guys done? But I'm going to help you. But she's just giving them somewhere to go to, and she's going to do the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, she's a, dispatcher. She worked for the police department. She's, not okay with any of this.
Good.
So by 9:30 p.m., the teens were in custody without any type of fight. Rod Ferrell gave a full confession to police. It was said that Heather didn't seem upset when she was first picked up by police, that she only had a breakdown when she got back to Florida and was finally separated from the group. She said she had no idea they were going to kill her parents until it was too late. She had to stay on Rod's good side out of fear, and a grand jury refused to indict Heather Wendorf, believing she had nothing to do with her parents' murder.
Well, I mean, I guess they just don't have enough proof. I mean, you can't just, cops or investigators can't just go in there and say, well, this is what we think. You got to have some type of proof. And unless they're talking, on each other, against each other, then you really don't, there's not a lot of hard evidence.
On February 12th of 1998, then 17-year-old Rod Ferrell pleaded guilty to the murders, claiming that the others who were traveling with him were innocent, except for Scott Anderson, who was just an accessory. Ferrell pleaded guilty to 2 counts of felony murder. His attorneys tried to argue that he was insane, and he had been diagnosed with several mental disorders, including a personality disorder and Asperger's syndrome. Rod was handed a death sentence. Charity Kesey was convicted of 2 counts of third-degree murder, robbery with a gun or a deadly weapon, and burglary armed with weapons or explosives. She was given 10.5 years in state prison. Dana Cooper was convicted of those charges as well, but she was given a 17.5-year prison sentence. Scott Anderson was convicted of the same charges as Rod Ferrell, and he was sentenced to life in prison. So for 2 years, Rod Ferrell held the record as the youngest inmate on death row, in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, he's what, 17?
At the time, yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
Until November of 2000, when the Florida Supreme Court reduced his sentence to life in prison. They made those sweeping changes that youth offenders couldn't be given death sentences.
Yeah, and in most instances, I would agree with that. But I'm telling you, man, some of these stories I've seen, the kid or the young offender is just evil, and when evil is what evil does. I just made that up, and they're never going to change, and they just happen to be a young person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once a shitbird, always a shitbird?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that home.
Is that like the Dylan line of thought there?
Evil is as evil does. Ugh.
Okay, Forrest Gump.
I think that's well, my mom always said that evil was like a box of chocolates.
My mama always said evil was some bitch and you got to punch him right in the fucking face. Okay. Actually, I think my grandma said that.
Wow.
She's feisty. Because Florida had long abolished parole, the sentence is like without it. So he has a life in prison sentence, the end. Kesey was released from prison in March of 2006, and Cooper was released from prison in October of 2011. On December, I guess it's December of 2018, Scott Anderson was resentenced by a circuit judge named Don Briggs to only 40 years in prison. So he was given credit because he's already been in for 22 years, and he will be first eligible for release in 2031.
So is Florida still that way? You basically serve your entire prison sentence? I'm going to investigate that.
I done the reckon so. I don't know. That's just what my research told me.
Yeah, someone out there may know, and if they do, shoot us an email. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. So basically, you're going to do your sentence.
Yeah, and again, in April of 2020, there was a resentencing hearing for Rod, and once again, he was given life without parole. Heather Wendorf remains free and lives in North Carolina, where she is married with children. She calls herself an artist on social media. Over the years, there has been a lot of discussion on Heather Wendorf's involvement in her parents' murders. Many people speculate that she was, in fact, the catalyst, that without Heather's, pressuring Rod, he wouldn't have just shown up and killed her parents.
Well, I mean, she's definitely the connection. I wonder if she got inherited the estate.
I don't know.
So that'd be interesting to know.
I know, for example, Rod had asked his ex-girlfriend, Janine, do you want me to murder your parents? And she said, no way. And he didn't murder her parents.
Well, and that's a normal response.
Right.
Like, I would prefer if you didn't murder my parents. Yeah, they piss me off sometimes, but I don't want them to die because they're my parents. But, I mean...
Well, I guess I see it as if he will take no. He will accept no as an answer in this one case. Then what made him go kill Heather's parents unless she gave him the green light or was like, yeah, I'll do it.
Well, and she didn't seem very, she was said to have not been all that upset when she first heard the news, and you think she might be in shock and all that, but she stayed with them. They went all around together, and she didn't sneak away, contact the authorities herself or anything like that. So she does. I don't know. Maybe we don't know what she was thinking, and she truly was more innocent than we think. But I find it doesn't seem that way. I mean, really, I know she's young and caught up in all this, but I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Just through researching this case, I am of the opinion that she had more to do with this than she's let on.
Well, I
feel like she was an active participant in this.
Yeah.
And I feel like this wouldn't have happened without Heather Wendorf.
It seemed that. It
like,
seems to
if
be
Rod
true.
was going to kill someone, maybe he was going to go kill somebody, whatever, but it specifically became Heather's parents because she had been greasing Rod this whole time. Like, my parents are horrible. They're abusive. I mean, he said Heather told him like her dad had been sexually molesting her and that was like a trigger for him because he had been molested as a kid.
Well, see, and he prided himself of being the manipulator, and he may very well have been manipulated himself.
Possibly. The research I used for this case, The Vampire Killings by Clifford Leyendecker book, and The Embrace by Aphrodite Jones. I recommend The Vampire Killings if you want like a good, just sort of factual reporting of the case. The Aphrodite Jones book was just a little too like flowery for me at times.
Yeah, you said, I don't believe, honestly, I've ever read a book of hers. I know she's got, real big in the true crime genre. But, I
mean, some people might enjoy that, but it was almost like it was too much, like, flowery, detailed, and, like,
Yeah, you said it was almost kind of like, and you felt this way instantly when you started reading it and we're trying to get through it. And this is not shitting on Aphrodite Jones or anyone that likes her. But you said it's almost like she was trying too hard, too fluffy.
Well, it was like taking a nonfiction story, but giving it, like, fiction elements. Like, the sky was crisp and the black sky with the full moon on the night that he was sired. And I'm like, how do you know? You weren't there?
Yeah,
I
so
don't know. Like, to me, it was just a little too much. And I like my nonfiction to just be like very matter of fact, I guess, especially when we're talking about true crime.
Well, yeah, I
and
agree.
that's just my preference. I mean, a lot of people probably would read The Embrace and think it was a great book. And it was interesting, and there were a lot of good facts in there. There's so much detail in the story. I mean, it was really hard to like pick the parts because there was so much I wanted to talk about, but we don't have like 4 hours to do a Rod Ferrell episode. Also, I should add that if you want to listen to one of my favorite bands, the legendary Shack Shakers, they have a murder ballad about this case. It's called Blood on the Bluegrass.
Really?
Yes.
I'm about to check that out.
Yep. It's on their Cockadoodle Don't album or something.
Ooh. So I'd like to thank our patrons who sponsor the show, and our other patrons, and all our listeners. Thank you for tuning in.
There's also a really cheesy movie. I found it on Amazon Prime. It is a free Prime video, so you can watch it, called Vampire Clan, that is based on this story. And it is super cheesy. It was like watching a Lifetime movie, but like a big budgeted Lifetime movie, if that makes sense.
Really?
Yeah, I couldn't even make it through the whole thing. It was really bad.
Well, they tried the 90s. They tried.
They did. But thanks for tuning in to this week's Mountain Murders. You can always send us an email, mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought about the episode. Or if you have got a suggestion for a case, you got a listener story. We just love to hear from you guys. Also, you can sign up at patreon.com/mountainmurderspodcast and become a patron. You're going to get ad-free episodes, which is pretty awesome. You're going to get exclusive content that's just for Patreon. We post a lot of photos, like some of the more graphic, like crime scene photos and stuff. We post there on Patreon instead of posting them on like social media. So definitely, consider signing up. We have discounts if you sign up for the whole year.
Yeah, a lot of people are taking advantage of that discount, and we really appreciate their support. We also, you can have access to our Discord chat.
Yeah,
and you know what? You can holler at me day and night. You never know when I'm awake.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about Discord is if you sign up on Patreon, you join us on our Discord server, and we can chat, and like we chat with our patrons all the time. So if you want like one-on-one access with us, you want to like have a conversation with your hosts, do it. Sign up for Patreon, and we'll have a Discord chat.
Yep, we would love for everyone to take advantage of that can take advantage and join for that purpose. Hey, Stephanie.
We talk about all kinds of shit.
I was talking to
Not only do we
Stephanie.
talk about true crime, but like you and Stephanie were having all sorts of crazy conversations the other night, and now she has encouraged me. I'm going to go buy a cricket.
Yeah.
So I can make some cool ass merch. So we love you, Stephanie.
Yeah, that was a great idea. Thanks for that, Stephanie. And in the future, very soon, there is going to be customizable Mountain Murders merch.
Woohoo! Okay, guys, have a great week, and we'll be back on Wednesday with an offbeat episode. Gonna finish up our Asylum series. One more, one and done, Dylan. One and done.
Yes, I can't wait to see where we go next.
I'm gonna go tuck this little boy in bed. He's got his little footy jammies on, little trapdoor in the back. He's looking all cute.
Oh.
Little blue bunny ears. We're gonna go put him in a bed. Night, night.